Waiting. Okay. Hello. Happy Monday. My name is Juno Solicita, and your name is?
Christian, Douglas.
Awesome. And maybe we can start off with you talking a bit about yourself and your comic book.
Well, we started the Unpopular Studio something like 10 years ago. With the whole idea of a studio is to bring back the classical folk tales and give it a 21st century um, spin. And we started with Red Riding Hood, something before 10 years ago. Then we did a novel, and then we did some cyberpunk. And now we're doing this. Is going to be a second bound Pinocchio. That is artificial intelligence. And about me, I'm a Spanish. I was raised in the States, and now I live in Ireland. 40 a lot. I don't think that's highly relevant. And I like to tell stories. That's about it. I'm done some animation. I've done some short cinema. I've done some video clips, and I've been into comics. Some come like 10 years. Yeah.
That's awesome. Telling stories is so rewarding.
Yep.
Um, and what has inspired you to start with comic books?
Let's say something like 11 or 12 years ago. I was I stopped doing because I come from theater. That's what I was doing before comics, and wasn't an impasse. I haven't done anything like in 6 8 years, and I feel the bug. And I remember a friend of mine told me, "Hey, like you like to tell story, you like to write scripts. So why do you give it a chance to some comics?" This is what before Marvel and everything came along, So and I said, well, comic for kids, but I have this prejudice, like a lot of people still do. And so no, but read this, and he gave me Dark Knight, and I said, okay, so this is not for kids, and he then gave me like Sadman and Watchmen and etc. etc. So I said, oh, so then I realized what I know now is that comics are just an art form, so it can be whatever the creator wants it to do, so it can be anything from education to philosophy to abstract, just pure entertainment, adventure, action, morality, whatever you want to put it on the page, it can handle it. So that's why I came into comics, because I thought it was a good, and also normally for people who don't know, the process doesn't involve a lot of people, because I came from theater. Even if you have one actor on scene, you still have at least 6 or 8 people on the crew, because you have lighting, you have sound, you have stage, you have of course marketing, and you have production. So you still have 8 or 10 people just for one actor production. So in a comic can be as little as 1 or 2 persons, or three at the most. So it also is a lot more manageable than something like theater or cinema or TV. There's always a large group of people.
Yeah. And what would you say is your process for script writing a comic book?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? What was the process to write?
Yeah, for script writing a comic book.
Is as some people know, it's very similar to cinema, in which you have to talk about panels, and you have to talk about this is what the action is moving, and this is the dialogue, and then this happens, and then the other thing happens. So it's similar to cinema. It's not exactly the same, because of course there's a lot of things in cinema you don't have in comics, and vice versa, but it's very similar in and also it's similar to theater in you have actors that are characters that are playing a scene. So it's, if you see my scripts from like cinema and theater and comics, are very similar in that sense, in that they deal with actions and visuals and interaction within characters. So it's kind of the same trope, not exactly the same, but similar. Let's call them.
And what do you think is the most rewarding about creating your comic books?
The most rewarding, I think there are two moments. The first one is when you have them on your hands for the first time. That's highly rewarding, because that's something that's been living in your head for months or sometimes years, and actually seeing it on physical, to be a physical thing, is that's highly rewarding. Even if you don't sell one copy, you don't care, but it's there, it's alive, it's real. And the second time that is highly rewarding when somebody reads it and they like it and they tell you about it. That's also highly rewarding because you kind of like justify yourself. Okay, so I'm not doing this just for me, because a lot of the creators, it's a little secret, we create for ourselves first. We are the first one who want to be entertained, and be delighted and have something to say. So we kind of first do it for ourselves, and then we give it to the audience. So and then they take it and then they spin with it, and they go they take it for a spin. So that's the whole idea. So I will say those two are the most rewarding moments by far.
Awesome. And do you think you can walk us through a day in your life?
Well, a day in my life, I get up very early, normally at 6. I do some meditation, some yoga. I write until 8 or 9. Then I start my daily job. I work in IT. Finish at 5. Have some stroll, a walkabout, and then I do all the I call it the non-creative part of the business. So marketing, social media, layout, talking to distributors, to artists, to so that's a day in my life. Hopefully, I have some time to read something or to watch something that I like, and go to bed, and then rise and repeat. It's important to have a
Awesome.
routine and to have some discipline in your especially if you want to have a creative work. It's something that Stephen King said that, hey, how do you do a novel every 3 months? But every day I do 20, 30 pages. That's at the end of the month. That's not 100 pages. So just put in the time to grind those to whatever you're doing. You're drawing, or you're playing music, or you're composing, or you have to have a bunch of time scheduled for that only. And you have to be disciplined even if you don't feel like it, or you're not inspired. It's a joke that the inspiration always needs you get your caught when you're working. That's how differentiate, in my view. That's what differentiate professionals and just amateurs. Amateurs are like, oh, I'm not inspired, and I forget about inspiration. You want this to be a job, so you have to treat it as a job. So you have to put time and do it every day.
I definitely agree. And that's definitely one way to get your stuff out there instead of just like leaving it to thought.
Yeah, 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 and that's something also that I was talking about this in another podcast, and they were saying that, yeah, anybody can, well, anybody, almost anybody can write a book, can write one and publish it, or says publish or whatever, Kickstarter. But when you do the second or the third or the fourth, in this case, this is my eighth one. So then you're a different breed. You're not like, okay, I did once because I had it in my bucket list and it's done and it's out there. But when you do it as a routine, when you do it every year or every other year, then you're in a different space. So and that takes mainly is discipline. I think discipline always outbeats talent, because talent can be improved, can be expanded, can be brought up. Of course, you have to have something, but what the discipline and time is going to give you is going to take you places that pure talent is not going to take you by itself.
That is true. Very wise words. Um, and what has been your biggest challenges you faced when you're creating comic books, publishing them, and getting them out there?
The biggest challenge is always is this. That's I want to help to thank you for this. Is to talk to media and to get the message out there. It's always the hardest one, especially when you're not famous and you don't have a PR manager or a whole studio behind it, or marketing agency, stuff like that. It's complicated to reach people outside of the circles, or outside of the convention, or outside of the drawing gatherings. So outside of the, let's call it the closed circle, when you want to move out to the mainstream, to get to those places, to be able to talk to people and to get an outlet, that's for me the most complicated part by far. The rest is grinding, and social media takes a lot of your time, and dealing with distributor takes a lot of your time. But you kind of like, that's part of the deal. And you know that creating is always the most fun part, but then you have this whole part of the business that is promoting it and taking it out there and taking the time. So, and you kind of like also count on that, but what you don't count at the beginning, at least I didn't, is that you have to insist and go back and keep pounding doors and, hey, have this, hey, you have a moment, hey, you have a space, hey, you have this. That's really exhausting because you have to do it always, all the time. It's true that with time you gain some relationships with some people from the press and from social media and stuff like that. But even those, because those people change job and they start doing something else, so this, you need to always need to update that, and that is exhausting. That for me is the most complicated part. So I thank you, Juno, for this opportunity and for giving me access to your followers and your people, because I know it takes a lot of your time. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I definitely understand. Um, and you said you have a upcoming comic book that's coming out?
Yep, it's gonna be on the 18th, so that's 10 days from now, and it's on Kickstarter already. So if you type in unpopulartales.com, it's gonna take you to the pre-launch page. You can follow it. I highly recommend you follow it, because we're gonna have certain perks and certain rewards only for the first 48 hours. Also help us with the Kickstarter algorithm. And you also have the video if you want to go to our socials in YouTube and Popular Studio. You have the trailer, and so you can see the quality of the work. It's gonna be it's really good. And it's not because I'm involved in it. It's, and the artist is a good friend of mine, Claudio Viveros. Is fantastic. He's a traditional artist. Everything is done by hand, and the pages are gorgeous, and the stories is quite good. So I think you're gonna, if you like cyberpunk, if you like science fiction, if you like adventure, I think you're gonna dig it for sure.
How exciting. And how do you develop like your characters and storylines in your comics?
I normally start with a theme I want to talk about. In this case was artificial intelligence and robotics and all that. And for that theme, I start to think about, okay, which will be a good mm, person to drive this forward or to carry this mantle. And for this story was really easy, quote unquote easy, because Pinocchio is the ultimate puppet. And the whole thing of this take is to forget about the the wood and the lights and all that, and put it like as an android, as a robot, no? So how will be this android that was created for a specific task develop in the world, and how he would relate to the situation that is brought in this case a girl. I think it was, as a machine, I don't like to use those terms so freely, like a girl, a boy, because it's really a thing. Um, it's a doesn't have any gender really. If you think about it, it's just an appliance, a toaster. I remember they used to call it in Battlestar Galactica. So, but we give them certain features to be a female. So, but again, it's a small kid, so that's not really important in the story at all. It's just we have to pick something and we pick it up. The most important thing is the journey. So how this machine will learn about first their world, the world of the machine, what happened with the world of the humans, and why they interact, and why they hate each other, and why they have been killing themselves for centuries. So that's how it develops. So first I start with theme, and then I think about, okay, who's gonna do the journey, and then I start to bring people who will either help this character or will be antagonizing of this character. So who's gonna put them problems, and who's gonna be in the way of getting the objective, you know. So that's kind of like I do, and then I start to break down and really do the whole backstory. And this is the characters. It's called the Bible. Normally, that's how they call it for TV. So then you do all the details, and this is how they dress, and this is how they behave, and this is how they talk, and this is the background. These were their parents, and these were most of their acquaintances, and this is the people who antagonize with them, etc., etc. So that's how I normally do it.
That's great. Thank you. Um, and you talked how you wake up every morning and you do some writing. You make sure you write every day to get it out there.
Yeah.
Do you ever get like writer's block?
Not really, because there's a rule that says all writing is just rewriting, and it's true that you never satisfy with the first thing you write, and sometimes it's just speedballing and getting ideas out there. It's not only, oh, I need to do this chapter today because this is what I'm. No, no, a lot of you cannot really control that. The only thing you can control, okay, I have done something today, so, and then I can review it later, I can tweak it, and I can modify it, and I can add, or I can subtract, but at least you did something. That's the most important thing. And I don't really, as I think I mentioned it before, I don't really believe in the whole writer's block thing, because it's like you have issues, like you stop breathing, or you stop being hungry. It's just, if you had it on you, it's always going to be there. Of course, you're gonna have bad days, good days, horrible ones, good ones. So, but you still do something every day. It's not only just the actual thing of clicking, or writing by hand, whatever your method. It's just also, okay, this is what this is how I stopped yesterday. Let's see how I can continue, or let's see how I can improve. Or I don't like this. Let's switch it on there. So that's also writing. It's not only the actual thing of action of writing something. It's also correcting and rewriting and adding and expanding and etc. etc. So yeah, for sure. So I don't believe in the whole writer's block thing. That's a myth. I also have my holidays too. My holidays I don't tend to, but that's like different. It's like, as I mentioned before, you treat it as a job, so you need to have also time off to recharge and think and expand. And but yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
And what tools do you use when you're creating your comic book, like softwares or different types of tools?
I'm not too big on using programs or stuff like that. I write in notes normally, or in Word, so I don't really use any special fancy type of program. Sometimes I even do by hand, or on a piece of paper. So the only tool you need is like a pencil and a piece of paper. That's about it. That's the only really tool, the only program software you really need. Then of course, after, well, you're gonna send it to somebody else, when you're gonna send it to the artist, you're gonna send it to the editor. Yeah, of course, you need to put it on digital and need to correct it and spell check and all that. But the first step is do it as simple as you can. You know, do it as simple as you can. Don't complicate yourself with stuff, and because I know that some writers, they type directly, they go directly to whatever program they use for layout. That's for me a little bit too far. I like to start small and build up with time, rather than jump steps. So, and I also give you time to reread and rethink and tweak and keep messing with it until you kind of see, okay, this looks nice.
That makes sense. Yeah, a lot of people told me they definitely prefer like the pen and the paper. So I
Yeah,
definitely seen that more. I'm actually on that side as well. I enjoy writing down everything on paper rather than on the screen, but I do enjoy art on stuff like iPad myself.
yeah. No, no. I normally, as I mentioned before, sometimes I use the iPad to write, or sometimes I use a computer by itself. But depends on the day, As long as you keep, as long as you still have your time, you have an hour, your 2 hours, whatever time you allocate each day. As long as you sit down and do some work, it's not really that important where exactly did you do it. That's, at least for me. I don't know. Everybody else is different, but the important thing is that you actually did it. That's the important part. That you actually sit down and spend time and struggle with it.
And how do you stay organized like with your notes and your papers?
Normally, is I tend to use one. If I'm using paper, I tend to use the same notebook for the work, so I know more or less how long it's gonna take me. So let's say I need to do a 24 page script for a comic. So I know that's gonna take me at least 40, 50 pages because I'm gonna rewrite, I'm gonna cross out, I'm gonna throw things away, I'm gonna put things back. So I know I need at least a notebook of 75 pages, something like that. So I know that that notebook is for that. Sometimes you don't use it all, so you tear some pages and you put another one, but then you have folders for that. And the thing is that after that is done, quote unquote, and you pass it to the computer, then you can throw the notebook away, and you have it. You have the digital file. If I'm writing directly in the digital file, then I have a folder for the work, so, and then I do like first draft, second draft, third draft, correction, editing, so, but all in the same folder. And if I see something that I don't like, is that good thing with digital thing, you just erase it, that's it, you continue. So, but yeah, this is important to be organized, not to be all over the place when you're writing or when you're creating something. It's good that you have also time and space to play and to throw ideas around and to try things out, but it needs to be within a space. If you, for example, the notebook idea, yeah, okay, I have this page for the script, and then on this side I'm going to use it for uh, doing the timeline, for example, or doing the connections between the character, or doing the family tree if I'm writing about a legacy, or if or locations. Okay, so let's do a couple of pages about location, let's do a couple of pages of about a vehicle or whatever. So but it's all in the same place. You can then you put like sticky notes or things to remind you where it's everywhere. But important is to have everything in the same place. Then you have, and what I also have is notebooks, for a small notepad for like ideas or things are not connected to anything. And then I write those down, and then if they come back in the future, then I know I have something there, because this happened. The idea for this comic started something like 6 or 7 years ago. So, and it was not only until like 3 years ago that I actually sit down and say, okay, this is a story. There's a story here. There's a character here. There's a journey here. So let's put it on paper, and then let's talk about it. But then I went back to my notes. Oh, I thought about this. Oh, I thought about that. Oh, I don't like this, or I like that, or I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna change that. But more or less, I knew what everything was. So yeah, it's important to have some order too, for sure.
I love that organization process. Seems so like
Yeah,
clean. People could just do it. It's definitely a good one.
yeah, it's
Um,
important.
yes. Can you tell us about your favorite project that you've worked on?
The favorite project I worked on. Hmm. That's a tricky one. I did some. I was working on animation that they did for the. I think it was a 25th anniversary or 30th anniversary. I don't really remember. I would say 30th anniversary. Oh, Back to the Future, and they did an animation based on the script, and I participated in a couple of scenes. I did some of the scenes. I don't know if you've seen the movie of the Marty when this the cafeteria the first time he met his dad. I did one of some of those scenes. That was it didn't premiere. They didn't do like a whole project about it, but it was shown to the creator and the director, and it was fantastic. It was one of my favorite movies, and it was really fun. The group was good, and it was a lot of work for sure, because animation is not an easy task at all. But it was fun. I think it was that's the one I was most excited about working on, and because it was an IP that I love, and I was very comfortable working on it. And so yeah, that's for sure. Probably one of my favorite ones too. I have several, but that was, if you want to pick one, that will be it for sure.
I can see why. That definitely does sound very fun and exciting.
Yeah.
Um, and which character that you created do you think is your favorite?
Oof. That's very complicated question to answer because that is if you have kids, which is your favorite kid. Not add that to a parent. I don't know. I like all my characters. They're all different. They all have their own unique style and ideas and motivation behind them. So I don't pick favorites really. Mm, I would say all of them. Of course, now I'm highly invested in Pinocchio because that's the latest one, the protagonist of the latest one. But there are some characters that I wrote within that story that are really cool. So I cannot really choose. Oh, this is better than this one or the other one. So I would say all they all have their own time and their own situation, their own position, and the whole role and something they need to achieve. So I cannot really choose one. That will be very very complicated.
I love that. Great answer. And did you ever had like a difficult scene that you had to make in your comic book?
Yeah, sometimes it happens when there's a character that needs to explain something, and this concept is a complicated concept. It's not an easy concept. Let's say, for example, in this comic, the whole idea of self, of what is it to be alive, what is it, what do you consider something to be alive, to have a soul, whatever you want to call it, to have a ghost or to have a conscience. And that, because if you have a conversation about, that's a long conversation because you need to talk about self, you need to talk about the mind. So how do you put that and to make it into a language that you can express with images and doesn't become tedious or long or boring. So that was really challenging, for example. So I need to break down. Okay, so let me break it down in images. Let me break it down in concept. And then let's jump from one concept to the other in the scene. And of course, you're not gonna do it all in the same scene. You're gonna do a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. So you spread it out. So that was challenging because especially when you have a limited space of pages, you need to be very condensed and take out everything that is not essential. And that's something I learned doing by doing anthologies that they're always like short pages, like 6, 8, 12 pages, 14 max, something like that. So you need to tell a whole story in 10 pages or in 8 pages. So you need to really break it down to the bare minimum and just talk about that. Even though you have a lot of things you want to talk about. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. I want to show this. I'm going to show that. So, but I think it's a good exercise too, as a writer, to be able to condense your ideas and to make it more attractive, to make it more appealing.
I definitely understand. I sometimes have to when I do any of my writing, have to like shorten things and it gets pretty difficult.
It's tricky. It's tricky. And it gets
Um,
easier with time, but the beginning is very tricky, for sure. Especially if you're coming from where I'm coming from, because in theater, sometimes you have these long monologues, which is a character just talking for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And so, of course, that's pages and pages of dialogue. You cannot have that in a comic. That's impossible. You cannot do that. That would be, well, probably you can do it, but it would be horrible. So you need to break it down. Okay, so what is this character really talking, really saying? So okay, he's talking about death or whatever, or he's afraid of this. So okay, let's talk about that. And how can we do it in a way that is visually appealing? So all that is a whole process you need to get used to if you because it's different if you write novels than if you write comics and if you write script. The medium is different and you need to adapt to that medium. So yeah.
I agree. And how do you stay updated with the current trends in the comic book industry?
I don't. I'm not really keen on trends or just do things that are on the zeitgeist or things that are popular or whatever you want to call it. As I mentioned before, I started this comic something like 6 or 7 years ago, and nobody was talking about AI or anything 6, 7 years ago. It's something that I was interested because of my work and because of things I saw. And then when I finally finish out and release to the public, I say, oh, a lot of people say, oh, but you are jumping on the train of X. I said, I'm not jumping on any train. I have this. This has been going on for a long time. So I don't really believe in like fashion and stuff like that because I'm not in the fashion business. I'm not in the trend business. I'm in the business of telling stories. So the stories are, if they are good, that they remain on time. This is the original Pinocchio is from the 19th century. So it's a long time that that character's been there, and people still know if somebody tells you, hey, this is a story about Pinocchio, so everybody knows what you're talking about. It's the same with Red Riding Hood or Cinderella or Snow White or whatever you want to call it. So these are very old concepts that have remained in the culture. So that's what you that's what at least I would like to strive to make something that is stay there, not is not affected by trends or what is popular or what is in, or because that changes very rapidly and you cannot really jump on things like that.
I definitely agree. I'm a social media manager, content creator, so being on trends is something that is important where I work, but I'm not really a fan of jumping on trends myself. I'm more of somebody who likes to create trends, let's say that. I like to do my own thing. So I definitely get that part.
I think the most important thing is to be coherent with what you say and what you do, and then once you build that your let's call it your style or your tone or whatever you want to call it, then people will find, then you need to, once you have that established, then you need to find people who that resonate with. That's what you have to do, more than, oh, I want to be I want to jump into this trend, I want to do like what X is doing, because then it's kind of like that's how you behave when you're a teenager. When you have any personality, you want to be popular and you want to be recognized, so you hang out with the cool kids and you behave like them, you talk to them, you dress like them. But once you become an adult, you need to first be yourself, be your own self, and then you will attract people who are like-minded, not just always try to jump into whatever is in, because that's not going to lead you to anywhere. Like you were saying, you prefer to, more than to create trends, I would say it's like, hey, to establish a signature or a brand. Now they call it, I like to call it like a lot the brand. No, so what's the brand? So for me, that's the brand. So what's your voice? How do you handle things, and your something that will never, well, never. I don't think that in the near future a machine can replicate. Because that's really based on you and your experience and your beliefs and your upbringing, etc., etc. So
Mhm. Yep, branding yourself is very important when you want to get out there.
yep.
What changes have you seen in the comic book industry since you started?
I seen a lot of people come and go. They were gonna reinvent the wheel, and they say, oh, everything is digital now, or everything needs to be animated now, or everything needs to be X now. And I say, okay, let's see it, do it, let's see. And things are more or less the same. The only big change that I've seen, well, I would say two big changes that I've seen is first, um, the whole crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, what you want to call it, industry be in the mainstream. That's a big change I've seen. When I started doing this 10 years ago, nobody knew what was Kickstarter, nobody knew what was Indiegogo. And crowdfunding was seen like begging, and oh, there you this and this guy again asking for money, and it was seen like charity. And now everybody's doing it. All the big names are doing it. All the big companies are doing it. So because they finally realize it's just a marketing tool. That's it. That's it. That's one big change. And the second big change I've seen is, of course, the whole eruption of AI, especially on the creative process of doing drawings. Well, not drawings, like copying things, and people who are never drawing their life, now they release suspiciously all these books and so quickly, and now they also write this fantastic script, and then you start digging and say, oh, okay, this is not, this is AI, this is a copy of this is a copy of that. So that is another thing I've seen. And but that's a part of the, that's a technological change, and it's going to be a wave that we're going to have to ride, and eventually will settle, because this is like with everything that happened. And when the internet came, oh, everything's going to change, but things at the end go back to their calm ways, you know. But it's going to take time too, because it's something that is just being implemented quite recently, and it's going to take more years to be fully implemented. And it's true that it's going to change everything. I would say that this is, I talk to anybody who wants to listen, I would say that this is like the invention of the electricity, the implementation of the electricity. This is how, because it's not going to change only comics. It's going to change TV. It's going to change accounting. It's going to change traffic. It's going to change law. It's going to change everything. Because it's a technology that we don't know the end yet, and it can be applied to anything. It's like electricity or internet. So imagine all those, how much we have changed in the last 200 years, because everything is electrical, because now everything is connected to the internet. So this is going to be the next thing that's going to really change everything.
Yep, I agree. Um, and we talked about how things have changed now. Well, I think you kind of maybe a little bit answered this part. How do you
Oh,
see the future of comic books?
I think there's gonna be a lot of. We have discussed this in a podcast that I have with some friends from the media, a couple of illustrators and a sculptor and me, and we talk about this, and we kind of like agree that it's gonna be two main markets. It's gonna be the quick fix market, let's call it the cheap one, that's going to be produced by a machine or by a person supervising a machine. It's going to be quick, it's going to be fast, it's going to be trendy, it's going to change a lot, it's going to be cheaper. And then you're going to have the, let's call it the human side of the equation, you know. It's like when you one of my friends, he have this fantastic example, I think it's illustrated. It's like when you go to a wine cellar, and you want to, and you see that 20 prices for wine. You know, you have the cheap one, the shitty one that costs a couple of bucks, and then you have high end, 150,000 for a bottle. So depends on how much connoisseur you are, what is the occasion. You're gonna buy either the cheap one, or you're gonna spend a couple of 20s, or maybe you want 100 because it's your anniversary or whatever. So I think that's gonna be it. It's gonna be a cheap offer created by machines, being very repetitive, very let's call it plastic or whatever you want to call it, not so much original, but it's going to be used for easy, quick consumption. And then you're going to have the other side that's going to have levels. So you're going to have them, the up and coming creators, and the one that is already established, and the one that only works with pastels or whatever, and that's going to have different tiers of prices. So I think it's going to be those two. It's kind of like with cars, you know. So you have the cheap one to get you from point A to B, or you have then the Mercedes, the Jaguars, and the Rolls Royce that you spend more money, because there are a lot of people behind those, like verifying details, and so you buy quality, you know. So I think that's the two of them, and I think it's something that's happening already to a certain degree with the majors, DC, Marvel, all that. They're releasing all the time a lot of things. I don't say they're not good, but it's a lot of emptiness and that's not really there. And then you have all the indies, all the less mainstream, the Image and the Booms and all that, that they release less but with a higher quality, you know. So it's with everything. You see it with TV. You have Netflix that releases a lot, and you have Apple TV that releases less but more quality. So it's the same. It's kind of the same model, you know. So that's going to be established. You're going to have a cheap model. You're going to have the other one, and that one's going to have tiers. So yeah, that's how I see it at least.
Mhm. No, I definitely agree. Like you're saying, TV and stuff, especially with like, for example, Disney, like, they're just all these different things are producing a lot, and it's feeling more and more lifeless. Well, I've been talking to people like you and other creators, and I've been finding a lot of new and interesting comic books, and I'm really excited. That's why
Yeah,
I get really excited when people are indie because you just find really creative things.
there is not a lack of creativity. What there is a lack of is the of risk, especially these big companies. You mentioned Disney, but all any big companies, what they want is results. That's the only thing they really care about. They don't care about the quality. They don't care about the creator. They don't care about the audience. The only thing they care about is results. So they say,
Mhm.
okay, if we put 10, we want to make 20. So how we do this? And the thing is that TV and cinema production has gone through the roof in the last 10, 20 years. And now a movie needs because there's a lot of CGI, because there's a, but I think even George Lucas said it very good. And he's like the creator of CGI. So he said, hey, this is just a tool. This is not the end of the story. There needs to be a whole thing before you start putting special effects and all that. So it needs to be, they need to have a base. You need to have a whole character development. It needs to be a story. And then if you need, you can put things over there, but not the other way around. The thing is that now we have companies like Mattel or Hasbro that they just want to release their product and sell toys and sell whatever. They don't really care about who's writing or who's producing or who's directing. They don't really care. As long as that sells the whatever they're buying, sorry, as long as that, yeah, they're gonna keep doing it. And there's gonna be a lot of adjustment. We talk about this now a lot in my podcast, and Bob Iger's finally seeing it that they say, okay, we need to reduce the content and we need to focus on the stories, not so much on representation, not so much on ethnicity stuff, but stories. That's the important thing, and that's what it is for everyone. It's just stories. Who are what are the stories about? Well, that depends on the writer, that depends on the producer. But the most important thing is that it's not checking boxes. It's not okay. It needs to be three this and this race and this color, and no, it's the story good. Are the characters good? Are they real? Are they relatable? That's the important thing. Not if the CGI is good or the illumination is good or whatever. That's nothing. It's totally irrelevant. Is the story good? I give you this very clear example. One of the most famous indie comics ever that created were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That started with a black and white comic book, photocopied by some guys in a college. Okay, the quality was not good. The drawing was not good either because there were no really artists. But that spanned to a multi-million-dollar IP with time. Why? Because the story was good. The characters were good. That's it. With time, that's gonna grow. That's gonna get better. That's gonna be drawn by better people. You ain't gonna have to put more money in it. But the basic, the core was already there since the beginning.
Yeah, and I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's great.
Yeah.
I do think a good reason though with all of that has been because of 2020. Um, Everything shut down during that time, and afterwards, everybody had to get back up there, so they were producing this comic books, and they were producing films like crazy to try and get back up to where they used to be. And I think within these couple of years we're going to definitely see it like go a little bit slower, but it was going at a high speed at that time.
Yeah, of course. There was a whole time of that nobody was doing anything because we were
Mhm.
forced to not do anything. Um, for example, that time is when I realized that I needed to have a better online presence to have more digital marketing or to have more digital content because the majority of things and majority of our business is through the Kickstarter or through conventions. And during that time, there were no conventions. So the only thing was like, okay, we need to do more Kickstarter, we need to release more digital content because people still were gonna consume. And there are a lot of platforms grew a lot during those times because of course everybody was at home locked up. So I need to do something. I'm gonna go crazy. So we still need to produce things. So that. It was a really good time for that. Of course, there was all these the people who died. That was not fun for sure. And but for creative was a good time for like to reflect and say, okay, let's see which trend is going. And it's true that yeah, but it happened not only because of COVID. It also happened because of there's this model that Marvel started some years ago. Oh, we're gonna do a slate, and then we're gonna have everything planned for the last 10, 20 years, and that's not working anymore because you cannot do that, especially if you're not doing quality. If you're just releasing things to get it out there to see what happens, oof, especially if you're spending like hundreds of millions in each of those things. So no, 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 no. Less is better. Less is better. Pay attention and take your time, and we have this discussion with other publishers that are also indie, that they release, oh, I'm gonna release 12 titles this year. So okay, you have the time, you have the capacity, you have the team to promote this, to give this to places. I don't know, that's a little bit crazy, man. You're playing a game that the big only the big ones like to play, and even then they don't like to play that one because they knew that a lot of those money is just thrown away. So we prefer to do like 1, 2 releases a year, but take our time with it, nurture it, let it grow, find the audience, go to places, show it to people. So it's very important to do that, not to just throw things away and see what happens, see what sticks. I call that the spaghetti method. You know, like you throw spaghetti to the wall and see which one sticks. I don't know. That's I care about too much about. We talk about this, but I care about too much about my characters in my book just to throw them away to see which one lands. And oh, no, prefer less. Less is more. Less is
Mhm.
better for sure.
All right. Oh, sadly, we are running out of time, so I have a couple more questions to ask.
Sure.
You gave a lot of good advice today, but what advice would you give to upcoming comic book writers?
Um, Advice I will give is, as I mentioned before, have a routine. Um, don't treat it as a job at the beginning, but have a routine. So write every day, or draw every day, or paint every day, or color every day, whatever you want to do it, because there's a lot of things in this industry. Do it every day. At the beginning, forget about followers, forget about clients, forget about no, no, just concentrate on sharpening your axe, of getting better, and get feedback from people you trust or people you care about, and keep at it. And remember that it's a long race. It's not gonna go over. There's no overnight success. That doesn't exist. Whoever tells you that is lying to you or wants some money from you or something from you. So don't believe them. Sharp your axe, keep grinding it, and little by little you will gonna find your place in the community. Because the thing that happens a lot is like people believe that when they start, like everybody's waiting for them, or they have this crazy talent. Or so no. Even if you have really good talent, that's like a friend of mine tells me that if you're into this industry, your competition is Jim Lee. That's who you're competing with. You're competing with Jim Lee. You're competing with Alan Moore. You're competing with Neil Gaiman. You compete with really good people that have been doing this for decades. So that's your competitor. So you have to really be really good to what you're offering, and bear in mind that it's not only you out there; it's thousands, hundreds of, I would say now tens of thousands, and with AI, it's gonna be hundreds of thousands of people offering things all the time. So I need to be good. And the only way to be good is to do it. Keep doing it, getting better, get advice, and be able to accept feedback and keep doing it. That's it. That's it. No secrets.
Okay. Next question is, what do you think is the biggest common misconception in the comic book world?
The biggest common misconception in the comic world. This is a personal thing. I think that superheroes are not the way to go into comics. I think that topic is done. We have to move on from there. I think that a burden, a problem. No, no, I don't think everything is because we leaning into the wrong association. Oh, comics are about superheroes and they're for kids. No, no. Comics are not just about superheroes and not just for kids. There are people who do it. Okay, fantastic, but not me. I would never write about. I'm not into it at all about that. And that's because some people say, oh no, because yeah, we're popular because of Batman or whatever or Spider Man. These are comics that were done 80 years ago, 90 years ago. I think that they're done. They're good. Okay, you're not gonna invent a new one. Okay, they're already done. They're in the zeitgeist. They're part of culture. So let's try to do other things. Let's try to expand this medium. Let's try to blend with other things. Let's try to experiment things. That for me is the biggest misconception. We still insist on that topic, and I think that topic is completely overrun and exhausted.
Understandable. And our last question, which you may have already answered, but we always ask at the end anyways. Where can we find any of your work?
You can find it in our website unpopstudio.com. It's unpopstudio.com. It's unpopstudio.com. And I will, as I mentioned before, I highly recommend you follow our pre-launch page of the new comic Pinocchio. So it's unpopulartales.com. Unpopular Tales, just as it sounds, Unpopular Tales, and then you go directly to the pre-launch page. And you can also find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads, on Twitter, everywhere, on YouTube, on Popular Studios, on Popular Tales. You're gonna find us everywhere. So yeah, all those places you can find us. Oh no, you can ask Juno. She knows where we are. She knows how to get us.
Okay. Well, definitely thank you for meeting me with me today. It was very exciting. Thank you to everyone who's watching the live. I enjoyed doing it today. If anybody else wants to do an interview with me, they can always email me at that link right there, kingdomofhoursofficials@gmail.com. Um, and that is really it. So, bye
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a nice one.